Welcome to the Run Strong Run podcast, where I amplify inspiring voices from the back of the pack and loudly proclaim all runners count. Without further ado, here's this week's inspiring runner. Welcome to the podcast, Greg. I met Greg at the LA Marathon in the starting corrals. We ran the LA Marathon last month in March, and Greg came up to me and he was like, "Hey, I think I know you. I think I've seen your videos." And he ran just such a strong race. If you follow me on the socials, you know that I really struggled at the LA Marathon, but we're going to talk everything about leading up to the LA Marathon. It was Greg's very first marathon, and he absolutely crushed it on a really brutal day for many people, including myself. And we're going to talk about what's next for Greg. So without further ado, welcome Greg to the pod.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. I'm really honored and flattered to be here. A year ago, I would never have pictured that we would be having this conversation. So I'm excited. Hopefully I don't disappoint.
Oh my goodness. There's definitely not going to be any disappointment. So let's take us back to what made you want to sign up to run your very first marathon.
So I remember waking up early 2025, right? It was March. Turning on the TV just like I normally do, watch the morning news, and the LA Marathon was on. And, there were mile marker 10 between 10 and 15, whatever it was. And there was one American running and the leader of the pack, Matt Richmond. I wrote his name down and just had it playing in the background, listening, making breakfast. And he starts sprinting off. And I remember the commentators commenting what a rookie move it was, how the inexperience was showing. But he finished strong and finished the race, and he won the LA Marathon. It was the first American to do so in a while or ever. And I was just so impressed in the moment. And I thought, if he can win the marathon, then I can finish a marathon. And I kind of joked about it for a little while. Registration opened up a couple weeks later, and I signed up. And at that point, I knew that I was committed. I wasn't going to waste my time or money, that this was going to be a goal. And so I targeted 2026 to run the LA Marathon, and my goal was to complete it. And that started the journey.
So at that time, when you made that decision to run the LA Marathon in 2026, were you running at that time? Like, how many miles were you running at that time?
I was not running. I was doing the Disney fun runs, and they were fun because there's no expectations. You run through Disneyland, you do it twice a year. And that was the only kind of running that I would do. And again, it was more of an experience. So I knew that I was capable of running or finishing 13 miles, right? But not consistently. And so this was going to be a commitment on my part, and really on everybody's part that supported me, or my coworkers, my family, because it takes time. So not a lot. It wasn't exactly couch to running, but it was pretty close.
Okay. So for context, let's talk about like your outside support people, or what it took to train for a marathon, because you're absolutely right. To train for a marathon, it is almost like another job in itself. It does take time. So it sounds like you're a dad and you have a family and you have a job. So tell us more about like, what did you have to juggle in marathon training?
Ooh, so all of the above, right? Because family is important and they need their time. And work is important and needs its time. So really, I looked at the time that I had for myself, and it was a commitment to myself and to the goal. Like, okay, instead of watching TV, I need to do 30 minutes of running, and maybe, I have two small boys, and maybe while the boys are going through their bedtime routine, maybe sneaking off into the treadmill and getting those extra miles. So it was a commitment on the family's part, because they would see me go to the treadmill, or time where I would spend with them, little bits of time where I would have to wake up early. I sacrificed a lot of sleep. That was the sacrifice on my end. Like, I still had to work, I still had a family. I was like, okay, my time to run was between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. So there was a lot of gym sessions late at night. And then at work, my boss really pushes us to have a professional goal and a personal goal. And so I had a professional goal, and I put it out there. I was like, I'm speaking it into the universe. Like, if you're going to hear me talk about running a marathon, then I'm going to hold myself accountable to run that marathon a year from now. And so just following up questions. Hey, how's your training going? What did you do this weekend? So it really felt like everyone around me was involved and committed to my success or to my goal.
I think that's so important, and that's so great that you're right. Like, when you commit to running a marathon, you really do have to set that as like, this is something
I'm doing. It's not like, well, if training goes well, I'm going to run this marathon, because this is a message I receive from people of saying, help, I keep signing up for marathons, but then I chicken out or I drop out. And so in that marathon training time, did you ever have a moment like that where you're like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? Can I really do it? Like, what did you do if self-doubt did creep into your mind?
Of course, there was many moments of self-doubt, but I came up with a plan. It wasn't just about running a marathon in 2026. It was going to be a systematic approach to reaching that goal, right? And so I signed up for local 5Ks and getting in the habit of holding myself accountable to run 3 miles, run 5 miles. And that crept up to 10Ks, downloading apps that would hold me accountable, running half marathons to make sure that my training was on target. And there were many times where I was tired and I went to the gym and I had a scheduled long run. And by long run, 10 plus for me was a long run, where I wouldn't finish that goal. I would run 8 miles out of a 13-mile run. And I would tell myself, hey, 8 miles is still 8 miles. I'll try again tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up. Otherwise, I could easily spiral down. Well, why am I even doing this? I'm not going to do well. But no, I just kept looking at the little things. Like, it was 8 miles. I still did 8 miles. I still rewarded myself the way I wanted to, with shoes or a watch, or so little things that kept me going. But at the end, I knew that the long runs weren't in my schedule. I couldn't commit to more than 14 miles because that's just hours of time. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice. That's mine. I wasn't willing to sacrifice the time with my family to spend the extra hour running. And for me, that extra hour was just boring. It wasn't fun. I didn't want to do it and I wasn't going to do it. And so that kind of led to your videos, and what separated your videos from all the other influencers. And they're all fine and great in their part. But most of those videos are like, come with me as I run so many miles, as I do this. And yours were different. You're like, you can do this. Everyone can do this. This is my approach. And that was through Facebook. But those are limited videos. And so it was another commitment of downloading an extra app on Instagram to make sure I follow these videos. So many moments of doubt, but supported by individuals who I had never met, like yourself, people at work, people in my family, and just taking it day by day.
Yeah. Greg, like hearing those words about like what I'm putting out on social media, like it made a difference like in your training and on this journey to running your first marathon. Like that means so much to me. And in the starting crowds of the LA Marathon, meeting you, and I try to get to know all the runners around me, like their names, and I want to hear their stories and things like that. And do you remember my nickname for you to remember that your name was Greg?
Yes, Giant Greg.
That's right, because you're so tall that I was like, okay, giant Greg. But let's take us to now the LA Marathon experience. So I meet you in the starting corrals, and I'm trying to remember, like we were standing there in the starting corrals for probably like, what, 2 hours, if not more?
Yeah, it was about 2 hours, hour and a half-ish. It was exciting. You get to see everybody coming together. You get to see the groups and people wearing their outfits. And for me, it's been about looking at people's shoes, like, oh, what kind of shoes are they wearing? And asking questions and meeting you, like, okay, and talking to you, getting a few minutes, but also not wanting to monopolize your time because there's so many people that approach you. There's so many people that approach you and want to talk to you and see you, even if they're just passing by. They're like, hey, I know you. I'm here because of this. And talking to fellow individuals around you who had different goals. Some individuals wanted to finish under a certain time, or some want to be able to finish for the first time. And so being in that group was comforting. Like, okay. And really, at that point, my mentality was, I'm going to complete the marathon. That was my goal. And I looked at it as like, okay, I'm going to take the next 6 hours really to get to know the person next to me. And that's how I looked at it. I'm just going to talk to them for 6 hours. And I'm not going to really look at mile by mile. That will take care of itself, thanks to you. And I think I mentioned it, during the run, that you and I are running two completely different marathons, right? You are pacing, you are watching time, you are creating content, you are being bombarded with people, running from the sidelines, running from the streets. And I'm just enjoying the moment. So I'm like, oh, look at the golden arches. Look at this. We're in this part. And so it was a fun time. I've already started talking about the run, but it started from the beginning, just getting to know the people around us. And so it was good. It was a good start time. And the weather was still good at that time.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, so there's so many good nuggets that you just said, but I think one thing that's really important that I want people, especially listeners of this podcast, maybe they want to run their first marathon, but they're filled with this fear of this anxiety of like, do they belong in this running space? And I think what you just said is like, you knew that finding me and meeting these people around, like you found your people, you found your space. Like we in the back of the pack, like in that 5:56 hour time, often I have many first timers with me, and those people are seriously some of my favorite people because there's nothing that will ever compare to running your first marathon. And now I've done 65 full marathons, and I think I keep going because I'm trying to chase that feeling of that first marathon because there's nothing that's ever going to come close to that. But I think if you're listening and you want to run your first marathon, please go to my website, runstrongRun.com. I post my race schedule, find a race that I'm going to be at, and come and run with me. I would love nothing more than to run with you and pace you for your first marathon. So let's talk about now pacing because Greg, you knew from my videos, and then I talked about it in the starting corral that I was going to be running 2 minutes, walking 1 minute. I was being using run walk intervals right from the beginning, the whole way. In your training, had you been using run walk intervals?
Not at all. Not at all. But I also had never ran more than 14 miles. And so that was a last minute decision, but it was a couple of days prior to the marathon that I was committed to finishing the marathon. And that meant doing the run walk technique. I following the videos, I knew that you had run many marathons before, and you just stated in the 60s. And so that was the only change that I made. Other than that, I kept everything routine. I was like, no, I'm doing a run walk. I've heard good things. I've done the prep. And so I just trusted the system, your system, right? I just trusted the technique and the videos. I'm like, okay, and this is where we're at. And so it worked. And it worked. I felt great. Yeah, it was an amazing feeling to enjoy the marathon, to run every mile. It felt almost too easy up until a certain point. But the first 20 miles for sure, I was like, oh, I'm 20 miles in. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good, which was amazing. I would never have imagined.
Yeah. If you don't know, if you didn't follow my LA Marathon journey, those who are listening or watching, tuning in, LA Marathon was a big struggle for me, probably my worst marathon in about 10 years. And I knew I was struggling early on. Like mile 3 was when my calf cramps first started, which I've never experienced calf cramps that early before. Like maybe like a mile 23 of like a hot marathon. But when it started like mile 3, I kind of knew I was in trouble. And I was kind of like watching my heart rate. I knew my heart rate was high. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I utilize run walk intervals is because I know my heart rate tends to run high, and that helps me to regulate my heart rate. Like during the walk intervals, I can bring it back down. Unfortunately, due to the heat, I really think it was the heat because I know that I don't respond well to the heat. But my heart rate was at the peak of the zones of heart rate, like above 172 for 3.5 hours before I decided that I was going to call it and walk at about mile like 18, 19. So I had like lived in that zone. What is that? Zone 4, zone 5? I don't know, of the heart rate, super high heart rate. My head was pounding. I felt like I couldn't take in any gels or fueling or anything. So then my body's responding negatively to that because I'm not fueling. I even at about mile 15 or 16 changed our intervals. I said, okay, guys, we're going to do, I think I did run 1 minute, walk 45 seconds or something like that. I changed even the intervals to try to make it a little better for myself and others. I mean, because I know there were others around too who were struggling. And also, I was not an official pacer for the LA Marathon. I was unofficially pacing 5:50. They had an official 5:45 group and an official 6-hour group. And I remember early on, about like mile, I don't even know what it was, 4 or 5, like passing the 5:45 group. And I remember commenting, like, why am I passing 5:45 again? If I'm supposed to be like behind them, why am I passing them? And then at one point too, we actually passed 5.5-hour pace group. Later, afterwards, I found out that the official pace groups were actually told to go slower than their time due to the heat. So like the 5.5-hour pace group didn't finish until like 6:15 or something. But so there's a little backstory to the LA Marathon, how it was for me and how hard it was for me. And I felt like I was letting people down by not being able to hold my pace and pace people to the finish line. And it was a struggle just for me, like internally feeling like I was failing others. And then also, of course, I was just struggling physically. So I had this battle going on. And then also for the LA Marathon 2026, the race organizers knew that it was going to be a hot marathon. There was actually a heat advisory that day for LA. And so they were allowing people to stop and finish at mile 18, which caused a lot of controversy in the running world because they were said you could stop at mile 18 and get a finisher medal and not do the remaining 8.2 miles. And there was seriously a moment in my mind too where I was like, maybe I need to stop at mile 18. And I think if it weren't for my ego, honestly, I think the safer bet for my physical health would have been to stop at mile 18. But I was like, I'm here. I'm running the LA Marathon. I'm going to finish all 26.2. So sadly, Greg and I parted ways at about that mile 18, 19 mark when I was like, you keep going because like you're looking so strong, so fresh. You were also like wearing tights and a long sleeve shirt, which I was like, how are you not like dying? I was so dying. I had my cooling towel around me. I'm like pouring water on my head. It was just like so hot. And again, my heart rate was so high. But then here's Greg and Jen Jen will also be a future guest on this podcast too. But Jen, I first met in Maui in Hawaii. But there goes Jen and Greg just going ahead. So talk to us, Greg, about how you said mile 20, you felt great. And then take us to that final 10K, because I don't know, because you were ahead of me.
So it was about mile 20 when we parted ways. But again, you mentioned your struggles, but I couldn't tell. The people around you couldn't tell, even if they started at mile 3. And I remember commenting once we passed the 14-mile marker, like, I've gone this far and I feel this good, thanks in part to you and this technique that we're doing. All the meantime, you were struggling, unbeknown to the rest of us. You're contemplating life, right? And we're like, oh, this is amazing. But so I got to mile 20 and I had joined a running group the week before and they had a tent. And so got to stop by for a few seconds with them and meet up with them, and which was a great experience to have so many people that are cheering you and motivating you. It was amazing in mile 20. And about mile 21 is really when we parted ways. And I was committed to finishing together, right? That was the goal. The goal was to finish, however it was. But you have so many people coming up to you, that want to talk to you, and rightfully so, and I get it. But at that point is where I really felt like, okay, these are the miles where like now I'm starting to feel the heat. Now I'm starting to feel the weight on my shoulders. I need to just keep going. Nobody wants to talk to me, right? And so that's where we split up, and I had gone through. I joined the running group the week before. I attended an event because they had an ambassador for the LA Marathon, Rizzo, and joined the Azusa Pacers. And so they had an event where they had a gathering talking about mentally visualizing finishing the marathon. And so he walked us through. He's like, at mile 20, he's like, you're going to see your group. They're going to be to the right-hand side. They're going to give you pickle shots and massages. And it's those last 6 miles, right, that really are going to test you without even knowing how hot it was going to be. I mean, we knew that it was going to be hot, but until you felt it, right? And then the last 2 miles, it's hills, and there was less water breaks. So it was really grueling. And I kept going back to that speech that Rizzo gave just a couple days before. Like, these are your miles. This is what you've trained for. They're not going to be easy. Your body's already hurting. And one of the things that I had been telling myself throughout the year, throughout training, was, especially after long days of work or after long days with spending with the family, sometimes you just have to do things tired. That's my mantra. And so those last couple miles, I was like, I just have to do these tired. I'm not going to recover. There's not going to be no burst of energy. I just need to go and do it. And I still felt better than I thought I would, because I still had conserved a lot of energy running with you, and seeing that the corral get close and where they started weaning people off from the streets to make sure only finishers cross that line. That was a moment like, okay, we're about to finish. Like, this was such a cool event. But yes, I had long sleeves. I had tights because I had been training like that all year. And so I didn't want to change anything. This is routine. This is how I've been training. This is what I'm wearing. And I did think about mile 20, taking off the long sleeve, but I was like, no, I'm committed. I'm not thinking of anything else other than the miles ahead of me, 1 mile at a time. And so, yeah, that's why I wear that gear. And I still do.
Oh my goodness, Greg. Like, I just hope you know, like, how incredible of a race you ran. Like, having not only not run past mile 14 and then running such a strong first marathon, like, and just it sounds like your mental game was strong. So maybe you didn't get those long miles in that a regular training plan would do. Like, I usually recommend that people max out at like between 17 to 20 miles. So really, I guess at 14, you're not too far off from 17. But I love too how it just sounds like you've really dialed it in to like prioritize like your family, and you have your job, and you said you weren't willing to sacrifice that time with your family to put in those longer runs. And you're so right. Like, as a back of the pack marathoner, like to go out and run 18 miles training, you're looking at being out there for 4 hours. And that just sometimes can be quite boring. I mean, I'll say it too. This is why I run so many races, because the races are my training runs for my next one, because training a long run by yourself can sometimes be a little boring, and it takes away, you're right, time from your family. But Greg, talk about then crossing that finish line and realizing you just did a marathon. And then let's also talk about what's next for you. So first, how was that feeling crossing that first marathon finish line? What was the first thing you did afterwards? And then what's next for you?
It was an amazing feeling, right? Everything that I had worked for, everything that I had sacrificed, all the gels that I had tried that tasted terrible, that tasted good, all the shoes that I bought, the money that I committed, like it all paid off, right? It felt amazing. My body wasn't hurting. I was tired. I was thirsty, but I felt good. I felt good. And just to be around and seeing people celebrating with their family or loved ones, like that's just an amazing feeling. And instantly I was like, give me my medal. I've earned this medal, right? And then I knew that that's when the hard part, like the second hard part begins, because it's still half a mile to get out of the area. And you're tired, I'm hot, I'm thirsty. There's photo ops. Now I gotta like wipe my face and make sure I look presentable for this photo op. And all I want to do is lay down on the ground somewhere. But you can't, right? They keep moving, like keep going, keep going. But crossing was amazing. Crossing was amazing. And I knew, I was like, okay, there's pictures everywhere. Keep that in mind. Try to have a smile on your face, because this is a moment that will live forever in my brain and my core memories. And so it was a years long commitment that finally paid off. And what is next? So as I was getting close to the LA Marathon, I knew my goal was to finish. That was my entire goal. Even though a training said, oh, you're doing well, maybe you can push a little harder, or maybe you're not doing so well, maybe slow down. My goal was to finish, and I wasn't going to change that. So I knew that I wanted to sign up for another marathon closer to the end of the year and push myself in time. Because now I know I can finish a marathon. Now I know that I'm a marathoner. So I wanted to do that. And so I looked at marathons around, and I live in California, in Southern California. But I also wanted to treat myself. And so I had signed up for the New York Marathon, didn't get in. The Chicago Marathon didn't get in, because that would be cool, of course, right? But again, following your page, list of marathons, I'm like, okay, which one sounds good? Which ones would I be willing to travel and enjoy? So I signed up for the CIM, right? The California International Marathon, which is in December. So I'm looking forward to that. And so my goal for that one will be to beat a time. I came in at 5:55, so not too far off from our original pace. And hopefully I think I can do it at the 5 hour mark. If I can shave off an hour, I would be extremely pleased. But because we're still in April, I'm signing up for local 5Ks just to keep busy, to keep accountable, to keep running. In the meantime, just pushing myself to, okay, I think I can do a 5K in 30 minutes or whatever the time is. And just this morning, based on a video that you posted this week, we just ran 6 miles, like at an hour's pace. And that would be a PR for me. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I haven't done the run walk technique. Let me try it. And I did. I'm still wearing my clothes from the gym. I accomplished my goal, did the 10K under an hour using the technique. So I'm super proud of that too. And just to continue moving. And now the 2 boys that we have, they want their medals. And so we sign up for the local 5Ks. I'm like, you can get a medal. You just have to go out and earn it. And so it's become a family activity, which I enjoy. I enjoy those moments with them. Even though they're not pleased at waking up in the morning, they like the medal at the end. And so that's the goal, the CIM later this year.
Well, perfect. Well, I will see you there, because that's like one of my favorite races, the California National Marathon. A great culmination to an amazing year is running a fantastic race at CIM. I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to crush your 5 hour goal, shaving an hour off your marathon time. In the next 30 seconds, Greg, what number one piece of advice would you give to someone who's listening, who wants to run their first marathon?
Commit, and you can do it. Anyone can do it. It's a lot of mental preparation, and just commit. If you commit and tell yourself that you can do it, you will do it. Some days are easier than others. There's a lot of hard days. There's a lot of days of self-doubt. But as soon as that day ends, you have a fresh new day to be positive and achieve your goal. And anyway, if I can do it, then we can all do it. Not to sound like Rocky, but we can all do it.
I love it. We all can do it. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for being a guest on this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you at CIM.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Run Strong Run podcast. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Run Strong Run or through my website at runstrongrun.com. You can support this podcast through a rating, review, or share. Until next time, run strong and run happy.